everybody. Thank you so much for joining us despite the technical difficulties. My name is Martha, and on behalf of everybody from Team TechFest, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to our digital festival. So for the second year running, TechFest is hosting an entirely digital festival, and we're so glad that wherever you are, you've been able to join us. Tonight in particular, this is the first time we've had this particular technical difficulty, so I think we're doing pretty well. 2 festivals down, and this is the first time this has happened, so can't complain too much. Oh, good, there's some other people joining us now. I would like to also take this opportunity to say thank you to our wonderful sponsors. So I would like to thank our joint principal sponsors, BP and Shell, and also Equinor, who are very kindly sponsoring the digital public programme. Without their support, this wouldn't be possible. So a big shout out to our sponsors for supporting us tonight throughout the course of the festival. And I also want to thank our fabulous presenter, Dr. Runcie, who has been a long-time friend of TechFest and is always one of my personal festival highlights.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, no, I'm so delighted that you've been able to be with us tonight as part of our festival, and you know, you're just rolling with the punches with technical difficulties as well. So we really appreciate that. I'm so pleased you're all able to join us. You're in for a treat. I've been to some of Olga's talks previously, and I found your insight and also the advice that you give is always really fascinating and so useful. So I'm so pleased that you're able to join us. For tonight's talk, we're going to be learning specifically about sleep in teenagers and younger adults. So I'm really looking forward to that. You'll notice that all of your microphones have been muted and your cameras are turned off. Don't worry though, there will still be a chance to ask questions at the end. The reason why we've automatically turned off your microphones and your cameras is because, like I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording tonight's event. So we're, and again, we'll send that out to anyone that misses it, but we'll stop recording at the end of Olga's presentation. And at that point, you've got the opportunity to turn on your microphones if you wanted to ask questions. You can just do the little hands up symbol, which is at the bottom of your screen. You'll see there's a raise hand. And if you pop up your hand, then we're able to unmute your mic and you can ask questions. Alternatively, you'll see the chat button down there as well. So you can also ask questions in the chat if you would like. Okay. I think that's probably long enough. And if anybody else does want to join us later, then we'll be able to add them in. But without any further hesitation from me, I'm going to go ahead and pass you over to tonight's fabulous presenter, Dr. Olga.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody who managed to join us today. I'm really privileged and pleased to present again at TechFest. My name is Olga Runcie. My background is in mental health. I'm a consultant psychiatrist and sleep specialist, and I love talking about sleep. I feel very passionate about sleep. And I truly believe that everybody deserves a good quality sleep. And today I will be talking specifically about sleep in teenagers and younger adults. So why teenagers and younger adults? Because from scientific literature, we know that sleep deprivation in teenagers is actually epidemic. And this data confirmed by various publications across the globe. And recent studies shows that adolescents, young adults maintain their sleep schedule through school time. That's lead to insufficient sleep and ill-timed sleep. And at the root of this sleep deprivation is a tendency of teenagers and adolescents to fall asleep quite late, to stay up late. And this delayed timing of sleep onset usually has been attributed to social events that teenagers like use social media, like communicating at nighttime. So to various social aspects of adolescence scheduling. However, this phenomenon is is widespread and is present across the globe. Delayed in sleep onset in adolescent population has been noted in many countries in all continents, and presents itself in different cultures, including developed world, but also pre-industrial cultures where access to electricity and social media are not so widespread. And moreover, that a delayed sleep has been observed in other mammals, so it's not exclusively specific to humans. There are lots of animal research that indicate in rodents, for example, juvenile adolescent rodent display completely different sleep cycles. And we also see that girls begin to show a kind of late sleep onset, delay in sleep, approximately 1 year younger than boys, and that paralleling with the earlier pubertal development. So accumulating all of that, accumulating all this evidence, it's becoming very evident that social factors cannot completely account to all sleep changes and cannot account to all kind of problems with delayed sleep in adolescent. So if it's not social factors, then what? Let's look into that in more in depth and in details today. Let's go methodically through the questions that I frequently hear from the parents or even from my friends, co-workers. So why sleep is important for teenagers? Why do they stay up all night? Why is it so hard for them to fall asleep at normally kind of social convenient hours? And most importantly, how can they get better sleep? And what we can do as parents, how can we help our teenage children to get better sleep? So first of all, why sleep is so important? Why is it important for teenagers? Well, sleep is important for everybody, because during sleep, our brain, our body does lots of different jobs. But because adolescent brain is developing, is growing and maturing, the ill effect of sleep deprivation can be noticeable. And therefore, the functional importance of sleep could be even more actual for this population. We have overwhelming evidence to say that sleep contributing to effective functioning of virtually every system in the body. Do you know that sleep is important for laying our memories? We sleep to remember, we sleep to forget. During sleep, our brain is sorting the memories and help important memories to become long-term memories and forgetting kind of useless information that we really don't need. During sleep, our body activate toxin clearance system, which called glymphatic clearance, and that system specifically activated and increase in intensity during sleep, and brain is kind of clearing itself of toxic waste. During sleep, our tissues repair themselves, body rebuilding metabolic pathway, restoring our energy, improving our immune system, help regulate hormones, enabling our muscles to grow, our tissue to recover. So lots of jobs which could be described as housekeeping or maintenance tasks. As you imagine that during wakefulness, if you compare it to a big party, we came to a nicely arranged hall, lots of nice food laid out for us, everything so perfect, and here we kind of partied for several hours, demolished everything, destroyed, left mess behind ourselves, and left that room. So, and that army of cleaners, helpers, maintenance people come in and sorting everything out, preparing that facilities and venue for the next party on the following day. So that is what our body, our brain is doing for us during sleep, is actually maintaining our adequate functioning. So when we don't get enough sleep, when teenagers don't get enough sleep, they suffer consequences of sleep deprivation. And unless, not like adult brain, which usually require on average 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Here on illustration, you'll see different age groups and how much sleep do they require. So here the adult population from around age 26 to 64 that require between 6 to 10 hours of sleep. Then we see younger adults from age 18 to 25, which can require between 6 to 10, 11 hours sleep, and teenagers and also preschool, the younger age children of school age. So teens between 14 to age 17 will need up to 10 or 11 hours of sleep per night for adequate functioning. Of course, these numbers are average on population. You'll see the distribution can be quite large, but on average, average teenager need to sleep considerably longer than an average adult. So do teenagers actually get that duration of sleep? And unfortunately, they don't. What recent studies indicate that teenagers have considerably shorter duration of sleep compared to their required norms. Here the illustration on the left that says weekdays indicate duration of sleep according to age groups, and duration of sleep color coded. So you'll see the kind of obviously the red color representing shorter duration. So red kind of into red danger zone. So we'll see that the shortest sleep duration is actually in older adolescents from age 16, 17, 18. They have shortest duration of sleep. On weekdays, they will have restricted wake time. That's mean that they get up at certain time to go to school, to colleges, universities, so the restricted wake time. But despite restriction, their bedtime, the time when sleep actually occurs, considerably delayed, and this delay is much more prominent in older adolescents. On weekends, when they have unrestricted wake-up time, so they can sleep longer, we'll see that they do sleep longer, they have longer duration of sleep, but the delay of sleep onset still evident, still occur even on weekends. And this delay compared to adult population can be over 2 hours. So it's mean that teenagers on average getting off to sleep, becoming sleepier, approximately kind of 2 and almost 3 hours later compared to adults. The maximum delay occur in girls approximately at 19 years and boys at 20 years. So these tendencies start developing from early teens, from around age 12, 13, and go into young adulthood. So no wonder that teenagers and younger adults sleep deprived very frequently, and consequently they can have concentrational difficulties, poor memory, moodiness, clumsiness, but most importantly of all, reduced academic achievements, reduced academic performance, because teenagers, adolescents, early adults learn considerably more compared to us mature adults than educational process. So their brain accumulate, absorbing much more information compared to us. So they sleep required for longer period to process information, to sort these memories, to lay memories. And if they don't get adequate sleep, it's very commonly seen that their grades can suffer. And chronic partial sleep deprivation, it's mean that people not completely sleep deprived, they had some hours of sleep, but not the adequate duration of sleep. Chronic partial sleep deprivation can dramatic effect on teenagers' life, affecting their well-being, mental health, and reducing their academic performance. So why is it happening? Why is it teenagers kind of just not able to get off to sleep at normally conventional time? So it's something to do with the body clock. And here I will spend just a few minutes to give you a concept of body clock. If some of you have been at my talks before, you possibly heard this information about body clocks. Body clock is internal timekeeping system. Every cell in our body can act as autonomous circadian oscillator. Because our cells, our bodies, do different jobs at different time of the day during wakefulness and sleep, they need to switch. They need to switch between different shifts. So they need to anticipate what they're going to do during sleep at night shift and what kind of jobs they're going to do during awake, during day shift. So our internal timekeeping system, our body clocks anticipating this change, and therefore every cell in our body have a peripheral clock. Our livers, our kidneys, hearts, muscles, intestine, even our fat tissue and our hair have internal body clocks. But our bodies consist of millions of cells. So if every cell has independent body clock, it can be a chaos. So something needs to coordinate and orchestrate all these peripheral body clocks. So this job, not surprisingly, is done by our brain, which act as a master clock. There is a specific area in the brain, which called suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is a tiny, tiny part of the brain, located on the top of our optical chiasm. We have optic nerves coming from our eyes, going into the skull, and they crossing. And on the top of that cross, we have two nuclei, one on each side, but they tiny, like a rice grain. And that's our master clock. That area of the brain is a pacemaker that set our circadian rhythm. And this master clock coordinate like a conductor overlooking the orchestra of all peripheral clocks. But this master clock also need to be entrained to environment, because master clock is endogenous, is internal timekeeping system. In order to be in tune with environment, with cycles of light and night, our body clock can tune itself to environmental light, to sunlight. So in daytime, in the morning, daytime, we perceive environmental light. Our eyes, our retina collect information from this light and pass information through optic nerve into the master clock. And master clock tune itself to the kind of signals that come in from natural environmental light. So the more light gives signal to the brain to stay awake and keep awake. It's daytime, it's a day shift. And at nighttime, when absence of light, this signal stops being transmitted through that optic nerve, and our master clock switching into night mode. So our body start producing melatonin. During daytime, environmental light suppress melatonin production. At nighttime, in the absence of the light, the darkness facilitate production of melatonin. And that's entrainment system of our body clock. And then we all have rhythm. All humans, rhythmical creatures, we all have circadian rhythm, and that rhythm affect all biochemical parameters in our body, our hormones, our sugar level, activity level, all under circadian control. Here on the illustration, for example, we see two neurohormones: cortisol, that hormone of arousal and stress, and melatonin, which is a molecule of darkness. So melatonin has rhythm which it sits in a very, very low level during daytime, negligibly low level. And at dusk, when it's getting dark, the melatonin starts rising and then peaking at nighttime, keep high level during nighttime, and then start settling down into morning under influence of morning light. So light has suppressing effect on melatonin. So that's our melatonin rhythm, and cortisol in a completely different circadian pattern. So cortisol will be rising in the morning, keeping us alert, helping us to get alert, getting ready for the day, and then settling down and keep very low readings at nighttime. So what we see in teenagers and younger adults, that rhythm is shifting. Teens' body clock naturally shift to make them feel tired considerably later in the evening. So they want to go to bed later. They feel more active in evening hours. They want to sleep longer in the morning, and then it's really hard to wake them up in the morning. They feel fatigued and sleepy in the morning. So all the natural rhythm becoming hard to manage in social settings. So what is happening in their bodies? Basically, all these changes happening through pubertal period, because adolescence is a period of rhythmic reorganization during which physiology transitions from non-reproductive juvenile state into reproductive early adulthood. So during adolescence, we start producing gonadal or sex hormones, including androgens like testosterone, estrogens, progestins, and what's been demonstrated in numerous research, I just summarized all this finding in one slide, that our internal timekeeping system is exceptionally sensitive to all sex or gonadal hormones. And this effect can be described as a direct activational effect due to hormones working on their usual receptor sites. So, for example, activational effect of testosterone or estrogens. But these hormones also can demonstrate organizational effect, which is long-term and permanent effect due to changes on the transcription of particular genes. In simple language, sex hormones, androgens, estrogens, progestins will interact with our genome, with our genes, changing our proteins and changing parameters of cellular functioning. And then we see established changes in all parameters of circadian rhythm in adolescents and young adults. First of all, they have a longer free running period. Free running period is described by this period what I told you about, body clock that's generated internally. Our internal body clock generates a period of circadian oscillation roughly around 24 hours, but not exactly 24 hours. And then our body entrain it to 24-hour environmental cycles. So some people can have shorter free running period and some people can have longer free running period. So we see that teenagers have longer running period on kind of in research has been measured as 24-hour, 27 minutes compared to 24 hours, 12 minutes in adults. So in physiological sense, it's important, although you might feel it's just few minutes, but for circadian rhythm, it's considerable difference. We also see dramatic changes in circadian sensitivity to light in teenagers and younger adults. They demonstrate considerably enhanced sensitivity to the light in the evening, like hyperreactive to light in the evening, and flattened response to light in the morning. So when sun starts shining in the morning, coming through the window, it doesn't matter, they still can sleep, it doesn't affect them, it doesn't wake them up. But if they have a light at nighttime coming from all gadgets, their brain will be hyper responsive to stimulatory effect of this artificial light. We also see that teenagers and younger adults have higher tolerance to longer waking periods. So it's mean that they can tolerate on episodic sleep deprivation better compared to adults. If adults at certain point will just start feeling so sleepy and unable to sustain wakefulness, then younger adults and teenagers can tolerate for longer waking periods. And particularly in more mature adolescents, age from 16 to 18. So they can stay longer awake, but that can result in a longer period of compensatory sleep. So they can stay awake for hours and hours, sleep very little, but eventually at the compensatory sleep, they can have a period when they sleep maybe 12 hours, 13 hours in a row, just to compensate for previously long episodes of being awake. We also see considerable changes in circadian rhythm amplitude. Teenagers and younger adults tends to be more active in the evening hours with kind of less activity in the first part of the day. So even kind of the activity and rhythm through the daytime change. And from kind of laboratory studies, animal studies, we know that estrogen can directly affect neurochemical parameters of cells and suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is our master clock. Progesterone metabolites, for example, can modulate GABA receptors. GABA is one of our main inhibitory system. So all sex hormones can produce massive changes in our body physiology. All this happening obviously in a brief period of time, kind of from juvenile period. You'll see that your kids at age 10, 11 were sleeping kind of normal social hours, and suddenly they reach age 13, 14, and everything becoming so dramatically different when they go through puberty. So this illustration I put not to confuse you because it's a slightly kind of complex, a busy slide, but just to indicate here on the illustration, we see the parameters of our internal timekeeping system. So that's called suprachiasmatic nucleus, which I mentioned, which is our master clock. So this is our main master clock, and there's input, what can affect, what can, what given information, kind of putting information into suprachiasmatic nucleus. I say that our eyes, our retina on the eyes, some other areas in the brain putting input into master clock. And here the local areas which also responsible for generation of rhythm and circadian oscillations. And eventually the output, our chronotype, our preference to get off to sleep, our rhythm, our period of sleep, our sensitivity to light, amplitude of our rhythm, and the colors. So this is what's important for you, just to see the effect of hormones, of androgen, estrogens, or both, on different aspects of our internal timekeeping system. So you'll see everything colored either in red, blue, or purple, which is both. So ultimately, all aspects, all internal aspects of our circadian timekeeping system is under influence of sex hormones. And because the sex hormones start producing actively in pubertal period, in adolescence, so that is what causing that shift. So it's a very biologically driven change. Teenagers not to be blamed to be lazy or just not listening. They naturally, physiologically do not feel sleepy at the time when mature adults will feel sleepy. So usually that shift will be at least 1 hours, between 1 and 2 hours, when they feel sleepier considerably later. The problem that the school time, university time does not account to that. So they need to start time just like mature adults do. And they lived with either chronic partial sleep deprivation consequences or very frequently socially jet lagged. So the same feelings like we would have during travel across the zone, experiencing symptoms of jet lag, teenagers and younger adults can experience in normal life. It's called social jet lag. So that's illustration that just indicate how rhythm is delayed, how all the circadian rhythms delayed. So here in blue we see circadian rhythm, in green we see the sleep pressure, how our sleep pressure is rising when we awake and it's dropping when we are asleep. And this colored illustration is for normal rhythm, for normal circadian rhythm. And in this kind of gray broken line, we see delayed sleep. Everything is delayed. Everything is shifting in adolescence. And so pubertal hormones are responsible for that. And leading to accumulating sleep debt, leading to chronic sleep deprivation. Something to mention slightly more in details on couple previous few slides earlier, I say that teenagers and younger adults have very different sensitivity to light exposure. And there were a few studies researching that, and this study indicates sensitivity to light and effect of light on melatonin suppression in prepubertal and mid-pubertal children and late pubertal and post-pubertal adolescents. So prepubertal, mid-pubertal were between age 9 and 14, and other group kind of later, more mature children from age 14 to 16. And these groups of children were exposed to different lights, 15 lux, which is practically very small amount of dim light, 150 lux, also not very strong light, and 500 lux is average intensity of home lighting. So when you in your living room with lights on, you possibly would have around 500 lux. So this is just a general home lighting. So that is not intense light. So all these children were given exposure for 1 hour light at time between 11 p.m. and 12 midnight. So for 1 hour, they had different exposure of different intensity of light. And then researchers were taking salivary samples of melatonin. So they were kind of just tracking how melatonin is responding to different intensity of light settings. So interestingly, we'll see that in younger children, even very dim light, 15 lux, was enough to drop melatonin, to suppress melatonin production. On each graph in black dots, you'll see that will be placebo level, practically no light, 0.1 lux in darkness. So in darkness, that's the level of melatonin will be produced in darkness in a control environment. And then in kind of this empty dots, not colored dots, you'll see experimental group. So even small amount of light was enough to suppress melatonin in younger children, and considerable suppression of melatonin production. At 150 lux and 500 lux, we see considerable drop. And also it's interesting to see how quick this suppression happens. Exposure to bright light, and practically within half an hour, I will see massive drop in level of melatonin. In this particular study, researchers concluded that younger children and mid-teens would be more sensitive to light suppression, of light suppressing effect to melatonin suppression. I will take it with a pinch of salt, differentiation between the groups. What is absolutely evident that light exposure to light suppress melatonin, and that would affect the sleep quality and will knock off circadian rhythm further. Differentiation between the groups will need to be studied a bit more. And actually, there was another study done quite a while ago, looking at the general level of melatonin during puberty. And we see that more mature adolescents and post-pubertal teenagers and adolescents, they actually have low melatonin level anyway. So the conclusion from this study was that melatonin production generally declines during puberty. So the previous study possibly didn't take into consideration that all the children will produce less melatonin. And this illustrated here on the pictures on the top, the different groups of children depending on pubertal development. So that will be great. The Tanner grades developing how many secondary sexual signs children already develop, how much hair growing, the pubic hair, etc., for kind of the signs like that, and they graded. The grade 1 will be the youngest children with earlier pubertal signs, and then grade 5 would be the more kind of mature children and adolescents. Basically, the more mature group, the less melatonin they generally produce. So that's also need to be taken into consideration, that during puberty, the level of melatonin declining naturally. So if children and adolescents continue exposing themselves to artificial light, they worsening that melatonin suppression. And obviously, if they use light for longer in the evening, and they do, it's not just 1 hour between 11 and 12, our children start using gadgets and devices, doing homework, and then playing computer games, being on social media for many hours in the evening. So that will suppress their melatonin to a considerable range. And this slide I also frequently demonstrate to indicate what kind of light we can perceive from artificial gadgets, and what sort of light is actually harmful for our circadian rhythm and leading to melatonin suppression. We know that our circadian oscillator is most responsive to a blue light with a frequency of 480 nanometers. So this kind of light here, the cyanide blue, this is what suppress our melatonin. And on the left, you see a spectrum of light from a natural source. This is sunlight outside. That is what we'll see outside if we will do a spectrogram of natural daylight. In the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles, lots of blue light, lots of UV light, UVA, and infrared and red light just start building up. And already by 10 o'clock, there are lots of red lights, lots of infrared light. And red light almost a kind of reversing the effect of blue light. Everything that blue light done, the red light can slightly reverse. They always in the balance, they always complement each other. So there is no harmful effect from environmental light. When we use artificial gadgets, when we use our phones, tablets, laptops, computers, we get disproportionately high level of blue light of short spectrum, of short wave spectrum of light. And this exact light tend to suppress our melatonin. And very little red light. So when we meet this blue light on its own, without therapeutic effect of blue light, this light can be stressogenic. It can lead to increased cortisol level, and kind of not surprising, we see lots of anxiety, lots of kind of stress-related conditions in people nowadays. And the big question, how much impact is actually because of artificial light? It's need to be studied further, but contribution can be there. But without a doubt, we know that this frequency of light leads to melatonin suppression. And here is a slide indicating our Runcie family collective actigraphy study. A few years ago, I was very keen to get a medical device which called Actigraph. It's a wristband which measures activity, and it's slightly similar to Fitbit or other devices that people sometimes use as a sleep trackers or activity trackers. But this is a medical device. It's very expensive, but I got it free for trial for 1 week, and we decided that in the family we will try this device kind of few nights. Every member of the family will try device for a couple nights. Our younger member declined to take part, so eventually it was me, my husband for a couple nights, and my older son, who at that time was age about 15, 16, also tried the device. And we agreed, because it's a trial, we're not going to modify our behavior. We will do everything that what we normally were doing. So 7 nights of trial, how many? Yeah. And blue bars here indicate a time in bed. So when somebody in bed with device on, this will be recorded as a time in bed. The kind of darker blue is the time of sleep, and cyanide blue is the time of bed, but not sleeping, but being in bed, maybe resting or watching YouTube channels in bed. So here is me, and first kind of 2 bars, then it's my husband for 2 bars, and spot the teenager in the family. Here's a teenager. You can see that sleep starts later. He sleeps considerably later in the morning as well compared to us. And what other kind of all these lines indicate that this device also had ability to collect light of different spectrum. So the device could collect the overall exposure to light, and also break it in spectrum, how much blue light we were exposed to, red light, green light, and present here on these fluctuations. So it was in July, we spent lots of time outdoors, and when, for example, here's me outdoors, lots of light, different spectrum, lots of kind of red, infrared light here, and this black bars activity, how much activity. So the more activity here, better, and more light here outside is better. At nighttime, so that pre-sleep, we need to have less light. And here's my teenage son going to bed and hugging his iPad in bed, and you'll see intensity of blue light coming from the iPad. And it was quite shocking to see that's actually, yes, blue light is there, and medical device could pick it up. So it's not exaggeration. You'll see that considerable exposure to blue light from device. And also bearing in mind that the device, it's a wristband, it's on our arm, on our hand, and if you measure from the eyes, if you put a device that collect the information of light on eyes, it will be even higher. So when my son saw this, saw the intensity of blue light that he was exposing himself at the beginning of sleep period, he actually was shocked, and it's led him to modify his behavior considerably, leaving all his gadgets outside, not taking them into the bedroom, leaving his mobile phone charging in different room. I wouldn't say that he was absolutely perfect adhering to that, but it was a considerable change in his sleep behavior. Okay, and other causes, I mentioned biological causes, I mentioned fundamentally physiological hormonal changes, but also we shouldn't ignore the social aspects. Hectic after school scheduling, lots of homework, lots of activities that we try to encourage our children to do, sports, sometimes part-time work, social commitment, also social attitudes among teens and younger adults. It's not cool to be asleep, it's cool to be awake, and maybe even kind of the macho culture to be able to function on less sleep. Obviously stimulating activities, so it's not just the stimulation from blue light from physiological perspective, it's also cognitive stimulation, watching exciting series at nighttime, being on social media, waiting for that click that somebody liked your post or disliked your post, being upset about that. And it's becoming a vicious cycle. Insufficient sleep causes teenagers' brain becoming more active, and overactive brain is less able to fall asleep. And last but not least, we shouldn't forget potential of sleep disorders, because our children, younger adults, also can suffer from sleep disorders, just like adults. It can be sleep apnea. It's less common in children and younger adults, but it's possible. They might have specific conditions of sleep specific to children age. Sometimes they can have restless leg syndrome. It can be insomnia. So we shouldn't forget that. We shouldn't bear in mind that's a possibility of sleep disorder. So now let's move to what can we do. It's all kind of gloomy situation with children's and young adults physiology. So what can we do? Well, first of all, we can make sleep a priority and allocate sufficient time for sleep. I always start with that. Allocate sufficient time for sleep in your schedule. Prioritize sleep. It's very, very important. So don't trade time of sleep for anything else. Teenagers and adolescents, particularly through periods when they do revisions, when they prepare for exams, start consuming energy drinks and in afternoon, and also even in the first part of the day, just to stay awake. So we really should advise against that, because it's full of high level of caffeine, unhealthy doses of some vitamins and other additives. So avoid energy drinks because they just exacerbate that vicious cycle. We should encourage our teens to get more active during day, physically more active, so they're more tired at night, because the natural tendency will be inverse. They want to be more active at night and continue kind of that stimulatory activity at night. So we need to encourage them to do something physical during daytime. Remember that a bedroom always should be dark, cool, and quiet. I compare it to a cave. Remember, your bedroom is a cave. You only go to your cave to sleep. It's dark, it's cool, it's quiet. Limit screen time. Everybody talks about limiting screen times. How easy to say, how difficult to do. And here we, as parents, also should set examples and be a good role model for our children with that. Leave your gadgets yourself, show your children that you can have gadget-free time. Consistent pre-sleep routine is very important. I touch on that in this next slide. And bright light in the morning, very, very important. And obviously, if you suspect sleep disorder, if you tried everything, everything common sense, all good sleep management you tried, and you see that something unusual with sleep, consult your GP. What is pre-sleep ritual? Pre-sleep ritual encouraging us to reduce the level of cognitive arousal gradually and gently. Because when we awake, when we alert, we're kind of here in the middle of illustration. We awake, we alert, we solve problems, we're creative. And here where teenagers, younger adults usually would be when they're doing homework, doing revisions in the evening hours, they come from school and they have heaps of homework to do, particularly if they had any clubs, so they delay homework. And I don't know how can they do that, doing homework at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. So around this time, they're still in the cognitive state of considerable arousal to be awake and alert. But in order to fall asleep, we need to be in a state of deficient arousal. So we can't just jump from being awake and alert straight into deficient arousal level. We need to go gently and gradually through stages of becoming slightly inattentive, a bit kind of understimulated, a bit drowsy, dizzy, not dizzy, drowsy, sleepy, a bit sedated, and then eventually to sleep. Some people have expectations. They finished working, press the button on the computer, switch off, and it's mean that they can fall asleep as well. Switched off everything to bed, and it doesn't happen. What they say, the brain continue thinking, overthinking, and go through all that, all processes, analyzing the day. And this is normal. Our brain needs time to consider all the information, everything that we fed into the brain. And for these reasons, we need that downscale activity at nighttime. So when we call in it day, we stop working, we stop doing homework, emails off, everything switched off. And then we have unwind time, like dinner, going for a walk, watching television. Then we have pre-sleep time, our pre-sleep rituals, whatever works for you, the relaxation time, a bit of reading, a bit of mindful coloring, relaxing bath, shower, candles, meditation, and then eventually go to bed and to sleep. So how hard is that for younger adults and teenagers actually to implement that downscaling kind of routine? Because sometimes they do homework into 10, 11 p.m. and then they just want to fall asleep very quickly, and frequently describe that they're not able to do that. So we need to help them to create this kind of rituals to wind down, to calm down, to prepare themselves for sleep. And sometimes this means just reducing the amount of activities they do after school or extracurriculum. Young adults, teens like technology, and technology can help. So technology can be very harmful, but technology also can help. What they can do in the evening in order to minimize stimulatory effect of bright light. They can use blue light blocking glasses, and actually children very switched on that because they called gaming glasses. People who play computer games, they know that they can use them to block blue light, so the eyes are not getting tired so much, and they can play longer. They shouldn't play longer, but if you use blue light blocking glasses, it will help to reduce amount stimulatory blue light effect. We also can use a twilight red light bulbs. So we can put a special lighting system and to bedrooms, which will switch into kind of warm colors, orangey red color at night, which has a less stimulatory impact on the brain, has less tendency to suppress melatonin. On some computers, you can enable night light mode, and also on lots of modern gadgets can be a night mode with reduced intensity on screens, reduce intensity of brightness on screens. And we also can use light technology in the morning. So in the morning, we need the opposite. We need lots of light. And from some studies, we know that teens and younger adults are less receptive to morning light. So they need more and they need for longer. So we can also install a bright light system in the bedrooms, which can start on let's say 1 hour before expected wake up time. For example, Philips Hue have these light systems that can be programmed and will go off at a desired time. They work like wake up alarm clocks, but we also can help kids to use bright light devices in the morning, and sometimes that's available as light kind of glasses, like frames they can wear as a portable wearable. So bright light in the morning, and encourage time outside. Obviously, that's another problem. They get up, get to school, and they have very little time outside in the morning. But if they would be able to spend even at least 15 minutes more outside before starting school, that will be so helpful. As parents, what can we do? And this is, I think, the last slide. What can we do as parents? First of all, we should ask our teenage children about their sleep. From research data, we know that many parents don't even realize the children have sleep difficulties, the children struggling. So it will be worth having a conversation and ask children directly if they have any subjective problems with sleep, any worries, any kind of perception that they don't rest enough, if they are tired during daytime. Talk to them. Advocate for later school start times. That's the best evidence. The best evidence that delaying school starting time for older adolescents can be very beneficial as measured by attendance and academic performance. Again, easy to say, difficult to do. There are lots of research in this area coming from different countries, most of the research from the States. In the United States, the school start time even earlier compared to UK. Some schools in United States will start 7 o'clock or before 8 in the morning. So they had lots of research and looked into delayed school starting time and how beneficial it was for teenagers and older teenagers. That they felt less sleepy during daytime, school attendance improved, academic grades improved. There was a study published in 2018 from Singapore, quite a big study, also looked at how sleep-deprived children in Singapore, they compared to Chinese population, and they delayed school start by about 40-50 minutes with good effect. Our team, when I was doing my master degree in sleep medicine in Oxford, one of our tutors were talking about this grandiose project that the Oxford team had about researching sleep in teens. So they had a big project, they called it Teen Sleep. It started in 2014. They had several millions funding for that. And part of that project, they wanted to recruit 100 schools and to do randomized control trial into delayed school starting time with the schools. There was a massive advertising campaign, and maybe some of you saw that in papers, on television, on radio. They advertised everywhere. There were huge publications in national press. So the advertising campaign lasted for a year and a half, and they approached 400 schools directly, and involved government and all big names. And after all this massive campaign, 2 schools agreed to take part. So it was very difficult to even to do a trial, because school start time linked to not just to the pupils, it's teachers, it's us parents, it's transport. So it's all aspects of our life interlinked with school start time, but results are good. If it's possible to do, particularly for older children, for adolescents, results are good because they can sleep more, they less sleep deprived, less social jet lagged, so the academic performance improved, their well-being improved as well. What we can do to help teens is to avoid overscheduling and reduce commitment that can generate additional stress and trade-off with adequate sleep. If anything, sleep is a priority. If something should be traded, it's not sleep, it's other commitments. And encourage teens to see a doctor if sleep disorder or mental health issues consequently to inadequate sleep is suspected, or suspected that a medical condition can contribute to sleep difficulties. So if any kind of persistent concerns and persistent sleep problems, consult your doctor. Okay, so this is the end. I hope you've got some useful tips. If you need to contact me later, I put the email here and my website. And this year I also recorded sleep program which available online, which cover many aspects of sleep, and I put the link here for that as well. Okay, so now I will start.